Fantastic.
All right, I see it.
Yes, awesome. Yes, I got the chat. I can see it. We are good. All right.
Let me.
Yay! And we have our stage. Cooking.
I'll get the link
All
for you,
right, we ready to go.
Stage is up. Let me get the chat on here, and then go ahead and do intros for me, Thorn, while I get the last little.
Okay, welcome to To Be Determined. I am Thorn, your host, and my co-host is Mr. Logical Lion, and we have our guests today. Conscious, you want to introduce yourself?
Well, I'm a YouTuber from South Africa. I make short commentary videos on certain topics. And I'm also the head moderator of TYT Sucks on Reddit, a critical subreddit of the Young Turks. We're already 51% the size of the official TYT sub. And then I'm on Twitter as well.
Great. And your boy, Pat?
Hi, what's up, everybody? This is your boy, Pat. I'm a random YouTuber where I do videos on random topics. And, I also do a vid series called Shoutouts as well, where I shout out some of my favorite YouTubers. You can find me on Twitter and all that right there. And here I am.
All right, great. Lion?
Well, welcome both of you. I'm really happy that we have a diverse panel for this discussion today, because I figure this is probably going to be a 2-hour one like the last one that we had, because this is just such a wide topic. I have a feeling that we're going to cover a lot of ground. And anyone that has watched this podcast on the regular knows, I'm Logical Lion. I have a Twitter where I endeavor to get myself banned on a daily basis. So far, I've gotten close. But anyway, I do YouTube as well, and I'm moving all my videos over to vid.me because YouTube sucks, and I'm just sick of the censorship. So everyone else should move to vid.me as well.
I'm only going to be using this for like the live streams. I'm going to move all my other videos over to vid.me. I'm actually going to make little trailers for all of my videos on YouTube, telling people to go to vid.me because fuck YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'm going to throw my Twitter out real quick for the watch link. What I want to do, because of everything that's going on in America right now with Antifa and especially with Charlottesville, where you actually had a white supremacist rally, and unfortunately it takes a couple of days to really parse out whether or not it was a white supremacist rally, and that's another byproduct of Antifa and their stupidity. But when you actually have real live racists go out and do real live racist stuff, and it devolves into what it became, clearly there is a race problem in America. When I look at what's going on right now in America, I look for parallels in history that we can look back on and go, okay, they did the same shit we're doing right now. What was the end result? And the number one thing that comes to my head is apartheid in South Africa. I actually wanted to talk to Conscious specifically about this, given that he is South African. He grew up in. And even though apartheid ended in '91, it's like slavery ended in 1864, 5, whenever the emancipation, but it still affects American culture today. And apartheid happened 50 years ago. So Conscious, can you kind of give us a Reader's Digest of what actually apartheid was, kind of the backstory there?
Well, I'm gonna boil it down very simply because it's a very intricate and complicated policy. But the basic gist of it was you have a white minority in South Africa that sees, after we had a war in like the early 1900s, or the Boer War at the turn of the century, the turn of the 1800s into the 20th century, the white Afrikaans population in South Africa was very, very impoverished. So they realized, okay, firstly, we're a minority, and secondly, how do we protect our culture and our sense of nationalism and our sense of identity? So the basic rationale behind it, as I understand it, because there's many sides to what prompted this policy, was that in order to preserve the white Afrikaner identity, they basically they did the Homelands Act, where because South Africa has 11 official languages, so they created homelands for all the different cultures. The cultural differences within the black South African population is also very significant. So they gave every culture their own piece of land in South Africa. And like I said, the rationale behind it was the only way for the white minority in South Africa, according to their rationale, to continue existing was to basically rule the country and be able to use the government to run their own schools that taught their religion, their language, their culture. And it was basically a defense mechanism. It was a way of survival. It was the only way they saw how they could persist and exist on the continent of Africa.
If I could add a little bit of historical context of and why I see apartheid as a big deal in relation to what America is going through right now, is that the white identity was being challenged as a result of after the Boer War, the Industrial Revolution, or it wasn't, World War II caused massive industrialization across a lot of undeveloped areas, South Africa being one of them, and in 1948. You had a lot of blacks from rural areas coming into the cities because of the industrialization, created a lot of opportunities. But with this massive influx of country folk, the white industrialists saw their culture being eroded, their white Europeanness being flooded by
after the Boer War, the white population was impoverished, and they were a low skill population. You have to remember that we're not an academic demographic. My grandfather was the first in my family to go to university. That's 1.5 generations ago. So the thing is, that's where the Blanke Afrikaner vraagstuk, the arm Blanke Afrikaner vraagstuk comes in. The impoverished Afrikaner question comes in, where the government actually took a socialist approach, where they prioritized increasing the skill level of the white Afrikaner population and ensuring that they have work and upward mobility through the classes. And that's basically what apartheid facilitated. Was it created the environment within which they could do this, where they could basically lift up their people from the ashes of the war.
Right, and it was the National Party that got voted into power as a result. And this, again, I mean, this is really the crux of why I wanted to incorporate South Africa with Charlottesville and the race problems that we're facing in the West right now, is because the influx of bodies into the cities where their infrastructure wasn't ready for that. Like, there wasn't the health services, there wasn't housing services. These folks were coming into it happened in Chicago in the 1960s, I think, 1960s
yes,
and 70s.
Yes, it did, yes. And most of the black population of Chicago ended up getting pushed to what at the time was called the Black Belt, which is now known as like Englewood, Bronzeville, that area, because the white population did not want them living there, and they actually like violently pushed people out into those areas of the city.
And that's apartheid. That is what happened in South Africa, is you had social systems that weren't ready for this influx of bodies. They come in, they start demanding the same kind of treatment that the people that were already there, the health services, social services, all these other things that existed that attracted them to these cities that can't handle the bodies. So they start putting in candidates like we see in America, the super left-wing socialist, communist, everybody gets a free phone mentality, to the detriment of the minority. Well, in America, we're still a majority, but the ruling class.
You see, because the Afrikaans hierarchy of the time knew that a one-man, one-vote system would basically destroy their whole idea of creating this Afrikaner utopia, where they could have a say in what religion is taught in schools, what language is taught in schools, where the resources of the government goes. And they wanted to prioritize filtering, or well, not filtering, but like allocating most of their government resources into helping to uplift their own people. That was the rationale. They knew that in a one-man, one-vote system, they couldn't realize that mission, that dream they had, that nationalist at the end of the day dream.
So we boiled it down, the history of it down to basically the whites feeling threatened that their culture was under attack, and thereby instantiating a party that could prevent them from losing power, which lasted for the better part of 50 years and ended in 1991. What is the fallout of that force?
1994.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was 91.
Yeah, but it kind of started grinding to a halt at like the beginning of the 90s.
Gotcha.
But
okay,
1994 was when it officially
Understood. So in '94 it comes to a close, and yet we still see fallout today. Can you talk kind of modern day, what the remnants of apartheid?
Well, I think the most eye-catching and undeniable remnant is the fact that people are still segregated, but this time not by race, but economically. People economically segregate themselves now. We have huge African townships in South Africa, but we also have these gated communities where all the basically the to use the term, the privileged folk reside with their money, and they basically they can buy their security. So we have economic segregation at the moment. People buy themselves into safer neighborhoods and security, and basically living like they did 50, 30 years ago. So they can kind of, by doing that, they can sort of ignore the fact that the rest of the country is not in an ideal state.
Is it self-segregation at this point then, or is it just culturally they're used to it already?
Oh yeah, no. It's kind of a societal thing. It's people. If you grow up in because remember the races were segregated for the large part of 50,
right.
60 years. So people have an aversion from leaving that community. They've already created these communities, and the societal tendency is that you kind of stay in your community. So it's like, for example, you can see a microcosm of it happening in, for example, schools where where children of certain races kind of group together due to culture in that community, not due to race, but due to they share that communal past and that communal idea of they know where they come from. So you see that that's a microcosm of what's basically happening on a larger scale.
Yeah,
they share that identity.
That happens here too. It's like you could go into a lunchroom in some of the suburbs in Illinois, and you'll see like the kids that are of the same race tend to hang out together.
Yeah, I've noticed that growing up as well. Pat, in your experience, having left school, I don't know what you do for a living. Is self-segregation, something that is a part of your daily life in terms of, because you're, for those that may not know, Pat he's a black man, so different community.
In case you didn't notice.
Yeah, right. Is there self-segregation in the black community at large in America?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of self-segregation down here, and it's mostly like the people doing them themselves, not like like some systemic systemic point of view is kind of actually like clinging people together. It's mostly people just feeling like they need to stay with this certain type of clique because that's just the way it is, not realizing that they can expand their horizons and all that anywhere, but they just choose not to because this is where they feel more comfortable. So the majority of it is basically like people putting themselves in their own type of thing, like out there and say if you go into like a certain room and things like that, like a lunchroom, whatever, you mostly see like this certain type of people, like sitting with with their own kind and things like that. And if you see somebody sitting with somebody of different varieties, they're basically seen as like sellouts, or they're trying to be like this person or that person. So
yeah, it's a human tendency to stick to what you know.
Right. Yeah, it's a comfort for sure. But why is it when you stray, and Conscious, if you want to jump off of this as well, after Pat answers, because I'd like to know if there's a parallel in South Africa. Why is it that if folks stray from the quote unquote black community, they're considered sellouts?
I really wish I had the answer to that. It's so many ways to answer that. Well, some do kind of stray because, like they don't want to be, like seen as in this type of situation no more. Like some want to better themselves. Like when you see like down in the places like the hoods, the ghettos and all that right there, and you have somebody in that community who wants to better themselves, and and they actually take the opportunities given to them that'll help them better themselves to get out of that type of situation. While the people who choose to stick right there, they'll try to shame them and try to basically call them sellouts and all that right there, simply because they don't want them to better themselves. Let's see, what am I trying to look for? They're basically just because they don't have that push, they don't have that drive, they don't want that person who's trying to take those opportunities to have the same drive as well, because then they'll try to shame them and they'll try to call them like sellouts and all that right there. And well, some of them basically, I wouldn't say they actually sell out, they just want to do better in their lives. And they just don't want to be like this anymore. Like, like I want to have this, I want to have more. And if I have to get out of this situation, if I have to get out of this culture, if I have to get out of this, neighborhood in order to do that, then I'm willing to do that right there. And but like the people who tend to stay there, just that's just their thing. It's like they want to do it, but they just don't have that drive, that motivation, that push. They're just comfortable, so they try to shame the other people, who go out there and reach that thing in order to basically, save them, like save face for themselves because they don't have it.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you ever heard the whole thing, Pat, of why are you acting so white?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, because my husband gets that a lot because he's kind of a giant nerd. He doesn't really play all of that. He doesn't like going to those areas, and he doesn't really do any of that type of thing. And he constantly gets accused of like, why are you acting so white? Why can't you just date a black girl and all that? He got that a lot when he first met me. He doesn't anymore, but.
Oh, I've seen that. I've seen that so many times. Like if you choose to stay in, do your homework, read a book instead of ripping and running the streets and hanging out and going into trouble and all that right there, you're accused of being, like acting white and all that right there. If you choose to chase dreams instead of like sitting back and waiting for things to be handed to you because you feel like you owed something, all that happened to me a whole lot.
Yeah, there's actually a song by Killer Mike that actually references that exact fact, where he sings about how he, when he was younger, preferred reading literature while the people outside were just lying around the street doing nothing. And he always got dirty looks for that, and that kind of discouraged him from following that direction in his life. And he comes from the hood.
Conscious, is there a corollary? Do South African blacks hold each other down?
I can't really talk from experience. It's actually a department I don't know much about in terms of like keeping someone down from your tribe, I guess, or your group. But I don't know. I can speak from my own experience. It really depends on the socioeconomic tier that you come from. I think it's more prevalent among all the races as you go down to like working class and more like the impoverished areas. There it's more seen of if you hang out with the richer guys or with the more like outside crowd, then you're not very welcome. You're kind of seen as a traitor, I guess.
Okay, so yeah, exactly. Interesting. Okay, so this conversation is going to be controversial, and we'll probably end up in getting some kind of backlash from YouTube. And the reason for that is because of questions like the one I'm about to ask. Pat,
yeah.
Do you think that the attitude of blacks in America of holding each other down is a cultural thing of trying to unify against the white man, in air quotes, or was this something taught to the ancestors of blacks in America by the white man with the monkey and the ladder kind of scenario? I don't know if are you familiar with the axiom of the monkey and the ladder?
I said not really, but it's like,
okay. I will run through it really quick. So there's a room full of monkeys, and you bring in a ladder, and you set the ladder in the middle of the room, and you put a banana on top of the ladder. Obviously, all the monkeys are going to clamber up there. First time you do it, you blast them all with a fire hose, knock them all off the ladder. They try again, you blast them all off again. Over time, as you steadily replace the monkeys and continue to blast them, eventually you won't have to blast them with the fire hose anymore, because the monkeys who were blasted will prevent the new monkeys who have not been blasted from climbing the ladder. Eventually, monkeys who have never been blasted will prevent brand new monkeys from climbing the ladder, even though they don't know why. So if you fast forward 150 years of generations of black Americans, whereas there 4 generations ago, the ones who weren't killed, maimed, beaten, were the ones who followed the white man, did what white man said, held his fellow blacks, ratted out his other slaves that were trying to run away. What I'm trying to get at is there a culture of self-destruction in American blacks because it was taught to them or beat into them by American slavery, in your estimation?
All right, man, that's an interesting question right there. Like when you put it that way, and it's like I said, I do feel like a lot of things that we're doing right now is basically being like taught. Now I don't know if it's been taught by the white man or it's been taught by the black community, But that's what the majority of the attitude basically comes from. It's like when you see somebody trying to do a certain thing, and you know, like and people. And like people like the black community try to keep that person from doing that right there. I don't know if it's because they don't want to see them like better themselves better than they do, or if they're trying to teach them like, no, if you do this right here, you're gonna be seen as a sellout, you're gonna have a bad reputation and all this and all that right there. I don't know, it's one of those confusing questions. Like, I don't know if it's been taught by our side. I don't know if it's been taught by the white man's side. You know, like what you said right there, that was very interesting. It gives me something to think about.
Well, it does
So
seem
it's
that
like
it's
it's a hard
interesting.
question.
The
Yeah,
black,
it's a hard question to answer.
indeed, that even though quote unquote African Americans, a swath of them, I don't want to say majority, I don't want to say large. I'm obviously being a white guy who grew up in a white neighborhood. You know, I'm very insulated. But from what I see from mainstream media sources, obviously that's bullshit. Is that there's this black culture or this African culture idea, and yet when you look at black Africans, they don't behave in the same way as black Americans. So something along the way was changed. And obviously, you know, the elephant in the room, in my humble opinion, would be um, the disparities that black Americans went through, etc. What do you think, Thorne, in your experiences? Because forgive me, I always say you're half, and I think you correct me every time, but you're
Yeah.
half black, right?
No, I'm like more closer to like a 16th or something. And but I am half Puerto Rican. So some of this does apply to me too anyways. My husband is also black. So I see some of it and he calls it and I don't know either where it came from. Like the whole thing of stemming, like who was the person holding the hose, I guess is the question. But I'm not sure where it stemmed from, but a lot of things that I see is what my husband calls crabs in a bucket. And it's like a bucket full of crabs, and every time one tries to crawl out of the bucket, the other crabs pull him back in. And he often feels like that's the case, and like one of the things is it is a difficult question because he doesn't know where this stems from, and he doesn't know why the black community insists on doing that to each other. Because it is like they're trying to kneecap each other, and it's really a little bit insane to watch from an outside point of view, I guess. Because
Yeah, and it's like when you put it like that right there, it's like I said, you know, like when one tries to get out and the other one's try to pull them back in. And to me, it's like, you know, it's like basically, you know, like they don't want you to do no better than what they're doing right now. They want you to stay down as long as they're down. They want to keep everybody else that's around them that they know down as well, because they don't want you to do no better.
the Wicked Soul was saying gypsies do that too. It's interesting.
It is, and there's a what movie was that? I think it was Crash, or maybe it was a TV series. Dennis Hopper had a scene where he was talking to a black guy who was his driver or something, and Dennis Hopper was playing a very wealthy Jewish man, and he asked the black guy, and I hope this doesn't get marks on the channel or whatever. He said, "What is wrong with your people? When my people were put into ghettos, we worked together and formed our own businesses, our own police, we built ourselves up. When your people were put in the ghetto, you kill each other, you rob each other. What is wrong with your people?" And while the context of it was obviously a racist guy putting, you know, someone he felt less than himself on the spot, the question does remain, why is it that some groups seem to be I don't want to say accepting, but I think it's probably the most accurate word, accepting of self-destruction. I put a tweet the other day saying, black people, if you want more investment in your neighborhoods, stop robbing your own neighborhoods. I'm not advocating robbing someone else, but if you have to rob, go somewhere else. The more you rob your own neighborhoods, the exponential damage you do. And I want to throw it back to Conscious, because again, I look at apartheid, 1948, the parallels. Is those who suffered under apartheid, the black neighborhoods in South Africa, are they more Jewish ghettos in that they are working to build themselves up, or is it status quo, self-replicating, grandpa, you know, was poor, therefore I'm going to be poor?
For me, it's more of a, you have to understand that our ghettos are not like your ghettos. A ghetto here is literally a huge swath of land just covered in shacks made out of little pieces of tin and
Right.
metal and wood.
As a reminder, I live in Cambodia. I know
Mm.
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking more to like with like the American viewers and people
Right.
from outside. We
Yeah,
think of like a
it's
ghetto
very
with people
different.
living like in
Yeah.
kind of like shitty flats, but it's like no, that's not how it works in developing countries. In developing countries, you're rock bottom.
Literal shack.
Yeah, literal shack, little coal stove to keep you warm. You tap electricity illegally. Yeah, no. If a fire breaks out, fucking hundreds of people are in danger. When the rains come, the shacks start
Drifting and
struggling
falling.
to withstand the wind and the storm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think in South Africa it's a bit of a different situation than, for example, in America, when you look at why the impoverished communities are not pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. In South Africa, it's a literal poverty trap. Our unemployment rate is 33%. Now, you Americans lose your mind when your unemployment rate goes above 5%. 1 in 3 people in South Africa are unemployed.
Yeah,
So
that's insane. That is like an insane.
that is a near impossible situation to escape from. You need to be super fucking special if you want to get out of it, like the really shitty neighborhoods in South Africa.
And you have to know somebody. That's the thing. You can be as special as you want. If you don't know anybody, you're not getting out of that situation. You have to make yourself.
That's why people.
Yeah.
That's why people, especially in South Africa, people have this rationale of like, oh, just stop being poor, just start saving your money, and you can get out of it. Like,
What money?
that's not how it works. You can't really save money if you don't have a job, and it's fucking impossible to get a job.
Yep.
Yeah.
Does
So
segregation in the work?
it's like telling a depressed person just smile more.
Yeah. Now
It's
in
not how it
Chicago,
works.
this attitude that drives me nuts with, and it's not even just black folks in Chicago. It's certain folks in Chicago that are just like, I'm just like, well, why don't you just like get on the L train and go to Streeterville and see if you can find a job at one of the retail places? No, I don't want to leave my neighborhood. You don't want to leave your neighborhood? Then stop complaining that you're unemployed.
Yeah.
You're not trying now.
No. And that's what a lot of people basically, like a lot of people they either don't want to leave the neighborhood because they're used to that. And some feel like they're old things due to history and all that right there. So they feel like things should be given to them. So why work with something when you feel like you're entitled to it?
And
Well,
how can you run away if you leave your family and your friends there to kind of just rot away in that same situation that you wanted to escape so badly? I think a
Yeah.
lot of people's consciousness keeps them tethered to their community. They feel like I
Yeah,
might as well
same too.
stay and try and make it work.
Yeah, you know where
I can't just run away.
I feel that especially strongly when I lived in Miami. I was exposed to a lot of folks who are of like Hispanic descent, Colombian, Cuban, things like that. Those folks are never leaving Miami simply because they're just like, yeah, I could move. I would really like a better job, but it's like my abuelita lives here and my cousins live here, and like everybody lives on the same street, and like I can't just leave them. I can't just up and go. Like I would feel terrible if I just left them in their situation while I pursue something better. And it's like a guilt complex.
Thorne, I love you. I'm so glad we do this show together. That is such a great segue. I am in the process right now of my shit video card notwithstanding. For those who don't know, my video card burnt out this last week, and I've got like a backup of a backup sitting in here while I'm waiting for my new one to come in the mail. So anyway, I love this idea or what you bring up, saying I can't leave my grandma, my abuelita, or whatever.
Abuelita.
Yeah, whatever that is. I can't leave my family because that, to me, in my research, what I've been discovering is that white people, and these are all generalizing statements, of course, white people tend to value family, extended family, in a less prioritized role as do what we would consider ethnic minorities in America. Asians, great
yeah,
example.
but I think
Hispanics.
that's down to their situation. When you're in an impoverished community, you depend more on your support structure around you, and therefore, through generations on generations, that those kind of customs and that family cohesion kind of develops out of necessity. I see it in South Africa as well. And as you go to the more enriched communities, that connection disappears because people realize I don't need my family anymore for support. I can basically support myself. I can buy safety. I can buy happiness. I can buy support from friends. I can buy friends.
Because I see it here also in like recent arrivals from like Eastern Europe. I see the same thing. They're like, I gotta take care of I have to take care of my grandmother. She helped me get to this country. It's like I would feel guilty if I just like went to another state and left her behind. I can't
not just that you feel guilty. Like it would not be ethical in that person's mind. It would. I would guess that it would feel. I don't think I can imagine someone leaving their entire family behind for a better life and just leaving them to kind of figure it out on their own, like just deal with it.
Really, that's interesting.
And like even like my dad is Greek. His father came over like before World War I, right before World War I. I think like a couple months before it broke out. And in like the old Greek culture, the whole thing was when you grow up, your dad goes and lives with the daughter. So like you take care of your parents. That's just what you do. And like as generations of Greeks have kind of moved on, that kind of fell by the wayside as they got like moved into the middle class from the lowest class.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, a lot of European countries do tend to value family. I wonder if I'm viewing it from an American perspective, or maybe even a biased lens for my own life, because I grew up fairly poor.
If I can use an anecdote, but it's more of tongue in cheek than anything else. When I visited Europe a few years back, I stayed with a family there with one of my mates, and they live in like they're middle class, but they live in like a little box, and they have one car. They don't have a garden. They don't own their own place. They just like rent a little box, and they're middle class. So my tongue-in-cheek statement would be that their family, they're more cohesive with their family because you're basically just confined to that little matchbox home with these people. You better get along with these fuckers, or else you're going to have a very, very bad time.
Yeah, that's very true. That's funny. Well, anyway, the whole the basis of my argument, and again, it could be entirely a confirmationally biased one, is that it seems to me that people who are more willing to sever ties or more willing to branch out and go out on their own tend to not replicate the cycle of poverty that tends to hold disparate groups down. Is that you think that's a fair statement?
Could you repeat that?
No. Yeah, basically people who are willing to say, okay, mom, dad, I love you, but I have to live my life, tend to be more successful. I mean, to shorten
yes, I would, from my own personal experience, from the people I know and from the people that I've known that went on to be successful, it's the sociopaths that usually get it right and right on the money.
And that's scary.
Well, but is it? Because think about African blacks. The Africa as a country, the blacks, the African blacks in the sub-Saharan tribes, the Bushmen, the folks that haven't changed since 15,000 years ago. Yeah, they have been doing the same shit for 15,000 years. What they don't have, they're very happy. Don't realize. Yes,
I'm gonna sound like some pompous fucking elitist. What people fail to realize is that not everyone in these impoverished communities are fucking miserable. Now, we should do everything in our power to try and uplift these communities and because I'm I'm lean libertarian, I believe everyone should have equal opportunity to succeed in life. If you put in the work, you should achieve success in a perfect society. But for example, there was coincidentally an article in the paper a few weeks ago of these African women in South Africa that moved to a better neighborhood through economic mobility, which is a good story. But they said that the thing they missed was walking down every morning to fetch water from the river and talking and gossiping with all their girlfriends. And they missed that.
They lost something in that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can any of you imagine every morning getting up, walking down like 2 or 3, even 10 kilometers to the river, getting a bucket of water, putting it on your head and carrying it back, and that's basically your drinking water, washing water, little bit of bath water. That's it. And they miss that.
I said a lot of my childhood was spent in the country, so it's like, you know, I know what that feels like, you know, not to have running water and all that right there.
Yeah, it's very interesting that there are still places in America to this day that have similar situations. But again, like Conscious was saying, we look at it from the perspective of, here I sit in my, you know, my gilded throne in my crystal castle, looking down at the poor little plebs who can't even afford running water. When in actuality, everything in life is perspective. In actuality, for them, they're looking up going, man, you must be under so much stress having to deal with all that bullshit.
Yeah, if I can draw a parallel, like, people feel sorry for me that I can't drive and all this stuff, but the thing is, I kind of like my morning commute. I get to sit there and read and stuff on the bus, and if I had to drive, I would kind of lose that, and that would sort of suck. So it's all a matter of perspective.
Yep, we create worlds around our environments. That is a uniquely human adaptation. The ability to adapt ourselves to the environment, and the environment where necessary, you know, to what we need. But again, one thing that is missing, and again, this is the whole point of my opus that I'm working on right now, my massive video that will get me banned from YouTube because I'm a racist. The sub-Saharan Africans today are the same as they have been for 15,000 years for 2 reasons. Number one, it works. They have no reason to change. They have adapted to their environment in a successful manner. And number two, they don't have that genetic predisposition to wanderlust, to look over the next hill, to say, what else is out there? Europeans, and dare I say, we of little melanin, seem to me to have that genetic defect, to where we have to look what's over the next hill. We have to conquer the next village. We have to
destiny gene.
Now that could actually
Yes,
I could evolutionarily explain that for just from my own perspective. I read The Selfish Gene, and it kind of relates to something that was in there.
Thank you.
I'd recommend it to anyone, by the way. So to explain that is, remember, the Europeans come from very cold climates. Africa is pretty mild. They don't really have snowy winters or all the dangers, environmental dangers that Europe posed. Now, if you're an ancient, like archaic European, because evolution works very slow. Well, not just evolution. It's also a cultural thing. I think culture plays a large role as well in it as well. Now, see, what happens is, if you live in an area that has a winter that lasts for 3 or 4 months, and it's fucking cold, and you can't grow anything, and your animals die, and you're basically just confined to a little room, you need to start thinking farther and farther ahead. And the people that are unable to think far ahead and plan ahead and problem solve and are smart enough to realize that we need to store food and we need to prepare for the winter, the people that don't do that die. So their genes kind of stop right there. Their genetic lineage stops there. So the survivors are the people that are basically the preppers, the people that are prepared and can think far ahead. So from a cultural and a genetic perspective, Europeans are more prone to, from how I understand it, to think ahead in terms of, we need to prepare for this, we need to prepare for bad times. Because they come from that type of environment. But again, this is not conclusive science.
Right, yeah, it's a theory, because not to poke a hole in your theory, but like, how do you explain Egypt then? Because for the most part, Egypt is a pretty mild climate. There's a lot of, like, especially in North Africa, that is also a milder climate. There's a lot of empires that rose there as well that could be on par with some of the places that arose in Europe as well.
Yeah, but I think you'd find that exact same mentality there as well. You'd see that you'd find among those people that same culture, that same idea, that same mentality that persisted, that idea that, for example, I don't think Egypt is the most hospitable of places to create an empire. For example, there's a big difference between surviving and creating an empire. Egypt is easy to survive in, but it's a hard environment to create a thriving, prosperous empire in, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So you'd also need that type of thinking. So I think you see the exact same thing, or to a similar extent, happening in those regions.
Well, let's not forget the founding of Egypt as a culture, as a civilization. When it frustrates me when I watch documentaries about the migrations out of Africa, because they always show, like, you know, you get these three actors, they gussy them up to look like cave people, and then they show them walking over some desolate rock, you know, looking off into the distance. No, migration wasn't like that. It was, you know, you move 6 inches a year for 100,000 years, and now you're in Egypt. You know what I mean? It's not like they picked up their shit and they were hobos and went for a walk. So when you consider Egypt versus sub-Saharan African tribes, you're talking generations of evolution, both culturally, physically, you know, all the things that come along with evolution. So you could have an entirely different mindset by the time you get to an Egyptian civilization versus a Bushman style live off the land, especially when you consider the Nile River Valley flooded annually. So agriculture had to be built around when it was fertile and not when it was flooded. So Conscious is spot on with the planning ahead. Now, when you take it kind of a step further back and consider when we first went to Europe as a species, Homo habilis, I think, I could be wrong, I'm still in the researching process of this part of my theory.
If I can interrupt you for a second, Lion Patriot.
Certainly.
I was going to point this out too, but Lion Patriot pointed out that before the Antoine Dam, the Nile River was actually really unpredictable. There were actually there's actually a spot where for like I think 10 or 15 years it didn't rise or fall at all.
That's weird.
Yeah. It was, yeah, like I said, the Antoine Dam ended up controlling the flow, but around the time, I think it was right before, it was in the Old Kingdom dynasty, right before the rule of Queen Hatshepsut. There was a 10-year period where it didn't rain, it was a giant drought, and it didn't, like the Nile River, it didn't have its regular rise and fall, and she figured out basically how to connect trade routes to other parts of Africa because people were starving to death.
And I just want to shore up my theory because I know it's easy to take out of context. Now, a very common, lowest common denominator rebuttal would be, so are you basically saying that Europeans are more intelligent than Africans? Now, my theory goes like this. Intelligence is not measured in terms of just problem solving. You can be intelligent in whole different types of ways. If you look at, for example, the best example is, and I think Richard Dawkins mentions it in The Selfish Gene, a human and a shark are not more evolved. A human is not more evolved than a shark. If you drop a human in the middle of the ocean, you're going to fucking die. Then a shark's range supreme. Humans are best developed and the most evolved for their environment. So Europeans were the best evolved for their environment, and the Africans were best evolved for their environment. So there's no difference in terms of, if you want to construe my point as a supremacist point, it all goes down to what was your environment that you developed in, and to what extent did you master your environment? Now, for example, as Lion pointed out, if you look at the Bushmen, they didn't even have to develop the wheel because they were perfectly efficient in their way of life. They didn't need to have an industrial revolution. They were perfectly efficient. They didn't have to invent anything. They were perfectly happy in their way of life and how they had mastered their environment. So for me, if I look at a Bushman, a prime example of a Bushman, and you take, for example, an archaic European, there's no difference in terms of how evolved they are. They are both primarily perfectly evolved for their environment.
Yes, exactly.
It's the same as like Native Americans. The more that they study different Native American tribes, they're finding the ones that lived in the northern regions and the more forested regions, they're actually finding that they knew more about this shit than we thought, because they figured out how to use slash and burn tactics to basically make the land come back even more fertile. They would naturally slash and burn everything.
Pat, what do you think?
Right now, I'm taking all this in right now because I'm learning as I go.
Good. Well,
that's why I like being on these streams right here, because not only can I add my input, but I can also take what everybody's saying, and what's what I'm looking for. I can sit up here and observe, and I can learn as I go.
Yeah, and even if you have a disagreement, you can first mull it over and in your mind before you don't have to be forced to just prematurely produce a rebuttal. You can think about it and you can bring it up later.
Yeah.
Like I always tell the people following me on Twitter, if I talk bullshit, don't shy away from calling me out. If I wanted an echo chamber, I wouldn't be online. I would just have like a close circle of friends that just pat me on the back, say, "Oh, isn't it great that we're right and we know how the world works?" And then we jerk each other off.
So can I expand? Sorry, I got my thoughts better together. I was reading an article last night about the whole thing with Native American tribes, mostly in the Plains Indians and the North. The fact that they figured out how to use slash and burn and a lot of very basic but extremely efficient agricultural concepts. The environment, they lived there for so long that the environment actually came to rely on them being there. And when they were, like when the Europeans moved in and they died of, smallpox and wars and whatnot, the forest became so overgrown that, there was wildfires. It was hard to grow food. And just like the whole environmental thing, the environment of the area was just completely fucked up because those tribes weren't there anymore. And they weren't doing what they'd been doing for generations upon generations upon generations.
Well, fun fact, there's a theory that the buffalo, the bison, was almost extinct right before white man came to North America and got the Native Americans all sick with smallpox and killed most of them off. And then the buffalo came back.
Not
and then
extinct.
the white man killed them off.
Not extinct, but they said that their numbers were much better controlled when there were Native Americans in the area.
There wasn't nearly as many with the Indians hunting.
There's a reason they were a sacred animal in a lot of the tribes. Is because it's like, yeah, we need to not kill all of them off because that would be bad.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing, what Conscious was saying earlier about his statement about Europeans and problem solving and whatnot. There's two things I want to do with that. First, one thing that one of the theories that I'm kind of working on is the idea that Africans and Homo habilis in Africa, as we were migrating out of Africa, had an advantage, as did those in Asia and Central Asia, kind of south of Russia, over we, the Caucasus, who went west into Europe because of two factors. Number one, it was at the end of the Ice Age, so we were at the the very south end of glaciers. So very harsh living environment. So obviously we had smaller families, all the things that go with that. Plus, we were competing with another hominid who had been in Europe for tens of thousands of years, which were Neanderthals. People forget Neanderthals left Africa before us, settled Europe, and dominated Europe. Then we came to Europe, we the Caucasus, the white folks, and competed against another hominid species. I don't know, and I'm still researching this, I don't know if the Denisovans competed with the Asians, what would become the Asians directly. I don't think they did. So that would pit we, the European whites, the descendants of, in a unique category where from the very beginning we had to compete with our own kind. So we developed the, I don't want to say the greed mentality, but the take. We're takers. Because if you didn't, you died. There wasn't a land of plenty like Asia or the Rift Valley in Africa was. Our ancestors, our prehistoric ancestors, scraped for everything they had against an entrenched enemy. And I mean, that's just an evolutionary corollary that I see.
The Voice of One has a comment. Being able to live in one's surroundings is like muscle memory, as in the tribes, which is not a sign of high intelligence. Someone coming from another country and learning those skills on top of their own should be a better indicator of intelligence. But again, question comes, what's high intelligence?
Well, that was my second point, actually. I wanted to jump off of what Conscious had said, where his statement would get him some flack about saying that Europeans have quote-unquote higher intelligence. I could probably beat LeBron James in a spelling bee. He will kick my ass at any athletic endeavor, despite the fact that I've probably played football longer than him. I've been playing football since I was 4 years old. Almost 20 years of playing football. But he would beat me because he has an intelligence that I don't. We think of athletes as being these dumb brutes. Oh, he's just a physical thing. But think about the brain-body connection. The speed
and
with which
just think about all the processes that goes on in his brain. For example, if you have to catch a ball. Think of the mathematics that you have to go through, the physics that your brain has to calculate in terms of put your hand precisely where that ball is going to end up.
Yeah,
so
and then multiply that. with the plays.
When you see these videos online of people that are just incredible at their job, like I mean masters of for example, building things with wood or doing things with their hands, and I'm like, there's no difference for me between that person and the fucking academic that can recite a piece from Nietzsche. It's a different form of intelligence. And I think our perception of intelligence has kind of been hijacked by academia. They kind of have monopolized it, where if you can't write a 100-page essay on the socioeconomic situation in America, you're not smart.
Oh, fucking hell. I hate essays so much.
But that's the thing. That's where we're at. We're at a point where intelligence is confined and monopolized by academia, where you're only smart if you can do certain things. But for me personally, and it's my personal view, a person that's incredible at making tables and chairs, and a person that knows exactly how to breed cattle, and for example, a person, for example, take a bushman, a bushman that has extensive knowledge on what plants to use for certain diseases and what plants and other elements in nature to use to their advantage. That person is also a genius to me, in my perspective.
Yeah. You know how much you have to remember, especially for a culture that like doesn't write anything down. You have to remember that all in your head. That's a fuck ton of memorization ability that I just don't have, and most of us probably don't have.
Interesting enough, during the June holidays, I was up there in Mpumalanga, which is like the upper province of South Africa. And I met a witch doctor next to the road, and I was talking to him, and he was selling all his wares, like a whole like spread of plants and herbs and stuff. And I'm like, okay, what does this do? What does this do? Should I buy this? And he gives me an explanation of every one of those. And I'm like, okay, I want that one because it will do X or Y. And he's like, no, your white stomach will not be able to really digest that and get all of its properties. This one will be better for you, for the type of organs that you have. And I'm just looking like, this is super fucking interesting. This is knowledge that is not recorded. But this is still a form of knowledge.
And he's correct though too, because if you look at like some medical studies have shown that people who have a Mesoamerican background like myself were actually more likely to be lactose intolerant because they did not evolve around cows and milk and such. So he's actually probably onto something there.
Oh no, I have no doubt that if I had said like, "No, I'm an old man, like you don't know shit," and I would have taken one of those pieces of herbs, I would have shattered that out the next morning. I would have been sitting there, fuck, I should have listened.
Should have listened to the witch doctor. Oh God.
So what I ended up doing was he suggested I buy he sold me this bottle of chili powder because I like strong foods. And it was like this homemade chili powder that he grew himself, and he put it in like a custom bottle, actually an alcohol bottle with like this chili powder. And I posted it on Twitter the other day, where I was eating some of this on like an avocado sandwich that I made, and it was fucking incredible. And I was like, and he said this helps with like blood circulation and cardiovascular, and I believe him. I did some research afterwards, and he seems spot on with. And this guy isn't educated in this. He didn't go to university. This is just passed on knowledge that he has.
Yeah, we really take that for granted.
Probably ages old.
And it's like, is anybody familiar with slippery elm?
With what?
So slippery elm is it's a type of bark that is found in the continent in the northern United States, and it is a main component in several different types of medicine that we have. But it was originally like some Native American tribes used it to relieve headaches and fever. And it's just something so that's a form of abstract thinking, is noticing patterns like that. Like this person ate this thing and they immediately felt better. And you end up passing that down, and it ends up getting passed down as medicine. And people are just like, oh yeah, primitive tribes aren't capable of abstract thinking. That is abstract thinking. That's recognizing a pattern.
I also ended up buying a natural aphrodisiac that I can testify actually works. I was fucking surprised. Like, and this is the type of knowledge that people don't know. And the sad thing is that happens is all these corporations come in, and it's a big problem in developing countries. These corporations come in and they go to these villages and these tribes, and they ask them, okay, what plants are you growing? What plants are you gathering? And what do they do? Because they're looking for cosmetic and medical applications for these things. They want to market it. So what they do is they go into these places and they take their knowledge and they corporatize it, they trademark it, and they end up ravaging that area, and they just over harvest all the plants and they destroy the entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's happening with quinoa now. Quinoa was like in Peru and Chile. Quinoa was a common grain that nobody freaking knew about up until recently, when somebody figured out that it's actually delicious and good for you.
Damn hippies.
Yeah, but now the prices of quinoa are so high that the freaking natives in the area can't actually afford to eat the food that they've been eating for centuries.
Exactly.
It's evolution.
I'd be hating that right there, man. It's like when something starts out like that, and then all of a sudden they put a price on it. Like, really?
Yeah, it's like you guys didn't know about this until about roughly 7 years ago.
And now you just basically came in and monopolized the whole product, and now we can't use it, even though we are the original keepers of that knowledge.
It's like we probably sound like raging SJWs right now, but that is really fucked up.
Well, because the problem is it's not equal opportunity. It doesn't give someone an opportunity that like this quinoa discovery. The quinoa is the most delicious thing ever. The little local farmer doesn't get an opportunity to start a Walmart of quinoa, you know, because Walmart's already there.
I refuse to grant SJWs the monopoly on actually being outraged of when the little guy gets tread on. Like, I think we all can agree that is basically each of us needs to be outraged when there is actual injustice. Yeah. When the little guy gets tread on.
Well, again, to bring this back onto the race issue, the socio-economical, I hate using that word even though it's an appropriate one, is because it's been co-opted by the fucking SJWs.
I studied political science, so I kind of used that a habit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I studied economics, so I do the same. The problem is I
studied economics, so yeah, go on.
Oh, sweet. The main issue is not race at this point. It started as race, but because the race enabled other things, like in South Africa during apartheid, they had segregated employment. Certain jobs couldn't be done by black people. Therefore, I'm willing to bet, even though apartheid ended 26 whatever years ago, 25, 24, I suck at math on the spot, I bet you there's still some jobs that were illegal for blacks to have that there's still no blacks.
I suck at math, period.
Right. I mean, is that correct, Conscious? Are there?
Yeah. Your fundamentals are right. I just want to elaborate a bit more on it.
Go for it.
Yeah. What happens is, yes, during apartheid, these people were segregated by race. But today, the same things that are holding them back now is more due to the culture that segregation created. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah. So again, within these communities, there has created this culture. It goes back to what we talked about earlier, where this culture of we need to stick together, we need to help each other. One of us can't rise up above it and leave all the rest behind. It's called tall poppy syndrome, where the tallest poppy always gets cut down by whoever's running the grass. Fuck, I can't think of the word now. I'm translating. The lawnmower. The tallest blades of grass always get cut down in those type of communities. So this culture has been created within these communities that you stay behind. We look after each other. We don't focus on one person's prosperity. We grow as a group, and we stick together. We have each other's back. So that's the point I'm making, is that type of culture was kind of fostered by the idea that these people were put together and grouped by race. I said, well, seeing as we are being grouped together due to this physical aspect that we have in common, let's stick together and let's create like a tribe. Let's look after each other and fuck the world.
Race is real, though. Yeah, it's just irrelevant.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pat.
Mm-hmm. No, I was saying that I can see what you're saying right there, like the whole, like, you know, like we need to stick together. And it was like how, like what Logical said, like, you know, it may have started by with segregation, and after all this time, you know, people have just gotten used to the whole entire thing, so they just basically see it as that way as the norm. But when people start breaking down those barriers, they start breaking down that you know, that type of thinking right there, then that's when people start saying like for instance, like, you know, like living in the ghettos and all that right there. But when you try to expand out of that, you know, what used to be back in the day, you know, when the segregation and stuff like that, you know, was seen as basically like, you know, only white people did that, or only white people did this certain thing. Now that we have the freedoms, the rights, and the privileges to do the exact same thing that they're doing, and we try to actually go out there and do that, like I said, we try to break from the tribe and all that right there. And a lot of people see that as being white and kind of selling out right there. That's what I can really kind of see the whole thing right there. Like we're so used to one entire thing, but now we don't have to do that no more. And a lot of people just don't want to, you know, expand.
I think I can elaborate on that. You're spot on with that observation. I think what I can elaborate on it is what, for example, if you look at the different communities. On the one side, you have a community where everyone has equal opportunity. And I'm talking about the white community in South Africa specifically. You have a community where if you work hard enough, you can succeed. The support structure is there. You will have a job. And then you contrast it to, for example, the African home states, or the homelands rather. They have to stick together. They don't have equal opportunity. They don't. If they put in the work, there's always that chance that they're not going to succeed. So then that fosters that kind of culture where we're not on an equal playing field. So we might as well stick together and have each other's back and help kind of make sense of this mess. And even in today's society, that culture remains, that idea that we're not on a level playing field. It doesn't matter how hard we work. We might as well stay behind and just help each other out. And if you want to go off and try and better your own life, then you're kind of a traitor, because then you're not pouring your resources back into our community. You're kind of deserting us.
By this point in the game, do the root causes matter? Like at this point in the game, does it really matter what the actual root cause is? Because realistically, is it going to enable us to provide any kind of solution to the problem, do you think?
I think the best solution that I can think of is that it's through education and information, and just informing people that it's not such a bad thing to want to rise above your situation. And that your family members and your support structure should allow you to blossom and use your opportunities that are given to you. They shouldn't hold you back.
But
so
if the culture says, but I have to play devil's advocate here, if your culture says that you are simply saying that to try to hold them down, how are you going to get through that barrier? How are you going to educate those whose worldview says your education is a lie?
That's the catch-22 right there.
So how do you fix it? I mean, how do we solve this? How do we not have Charlottesville? Like what?
Now, do we think that there's just going to be a point in society where there's always going to be a Charlottesville and there's nothing we can do?
That's unacceptable, though, Thorn.
I know.
I mean, if that's the case, then okay, then we need a white nation, and we need a black nation, and we need an Asian nation. I mean, if we legitimately can't get along, then we need to segregate.
But here's the thing,
because
some of us can get along.
That was the rationale of the apartheid government. They basically came to the conclusion that we can't work together, so we'd rather just be great neighbors. We can't live under the same roof was basically their rationale.
But the thing
and history shows us segregation causes even more problems. It's bullshit.
In the long run, it fucks you. Segregation in the short run is a great... in the short run, it seems like it's giving results, but in the long run, it completely fucks you over. It's not a sustainable system to try and maintain.
So is the more diverse system the actually more sustainable one? Because everybody's bringing in their own ideas.
So, yeah, the more diverse system is the realistic one. You're not going to stop people from intermixing.
Is it culture, do you think?
Without a super authoritarian police state, you're never going to keep people segregated. No, they're not going to work.
And I mean, I am literal genetic proof that there are people from different cultures that can work together. Or I would not exist.
Work being in quotes.
Hey, that correlates to my heritage as well. A lot of white South Africans, like white supremacist South Africans, like to say, "Oh, but we're of pure European blood." No, son. The first Europeans that came here, they didn't bring any women with them. The first 50 years, they were just them. So they basically, if they wanted a woman, they had to go to the
No
Khoisan,
way.
to the Bushman community, and go flirt with one of those community members. So the thing, I think the statistic
that?
is something like all the oldest Afrikaans surnames, those family genes have like 5% African in them, because of the first settlers that came here didn't bring any women with them. And my family specifically, my family has a slave in it. One of my ancestors married his slave. Now that's a fucking morbid thing to imagine, like that something like that happened. I don't even know many hundred years ago. My family's been here since 1688, so I'm not of pure blood, and I don't fucking care. I think the if you stagnate and just keep to your little group, your genes actually weaken.
Yeah.
That's not just an opinion. That's a fact.
That is,
These
yeah.
little communities that just need to breed with themselves, they fucking genetically collapse.
Your gene pool starts to represent more of a kiddie pool.
Exactly. And that's why I don't understand the logic behind people that want to be of pure blood. Bitch, you don't want to be of pure blood. That's going to actually objectively weaken your genes.
Oh,
So it's not the best idea.
I was reminded of this one dude. I think he went on like Jerry Springer or Maori or something, and he was saying how he was of the pure white race, and he had taken a DNA test like beforehand. He was something like 14% black.
Yeah.
The look on his face was so great. He was so angry.
Oh man, we're all mixed with something.
That's how basically how our biology works. That's why we have sex and why we don't just replicate like bacteria, because of the way we reproduce, we actually strengthen our genes with everyone. It's like tempering iron. You take some of the best aspects from the other person, and they take some of yours, and you put that into one person, and you actually create, over generations, you actually create better people through that process.
True.
Of
actually,
not just restricting your gene pool to like a little group of people. Just look at pugs. I think the genetic variance within pugs is like, I think there's 30 different dogs within the pug family. I think it's restricted to only 30, their gene pool. They've been so genetically fucked over that they can't even, they struggle to even exist.
Yeah, they can't breathe.
Oh, it's like you can even go with humans. Look at some of the royal families. I mean, their family trees are so fucked up. Some of them make a circle.
The problem that we have in our modern gene pool, however, is that technology has outstripped our evolution, or has outpaced our evolution. So, unfortunately, our gene pool is going to steadily get weaker because of that, because we don't have the natural skimming effect that would otherwise happen if we didn't have the technology. I say it all the time that dumb people should be kissing the ass of smart people for their very existence, because if smart people hadn't invented the technologies to keep dumb people from getting killed by the environment, there would only be smart people.
Here's the thing. I'm gonna post a link in the side chat. King Charles II,
Yes.
and he was the most incestuous creation that there was. After his death, they did an autopsy on him, and this is the actual description. His body did not contain a single drop of blood. His heart was the size of a peppercorn. His lungs were corroded. His intestines rotten and gangrenous, and he had a single testicle, black as coal, and his head was full of water.
Yeah.
Now, if you really want to go down that route of pure blood, that's where you're going to end up.
The dude was ridden with genetic defects, absolutely ridden with them.
Lovely.
So it was a miracle he was even alive.
But hey, at least he was pure. He could say he was of pure blood.
And I think they said he had
But he was fucked up.
Yeah, he had such a bad, like, I think he had the Habsburg jaw, and it was like so bad that they had to mash his food up for him because he couldn't chew.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
That's no way to live.
Yeah, but the Habsburg jaw
No,
is another example of like inbreeding.
Yeah. Well, it's genetic. You know, as Conscious was saying, our genes are designed for variety. But here's the thing: we don't make distinctions at all about hair color, except for gingers because they have no souls. But with the rest of hair colors, like, it's not an issue. Like, if you see a blonde person or a brunette or whatever, we don't make a distinction at all. It's simply the genes that evolved so that our lineage or whatever has that hair. The melanin amount for people is exactly the same. I don't understand why we have to get hung up on how dark someone is.
Well, that's another phenomenon that we actually can talk about.
Because the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice.
A phenomenon that we're seeing within certain black communities is this almost idea of the light-skinned within the community are now kind of also there's like a microcosm of segregation within these communities as well, and it's almost like a perversion of that idea that the lighter skin you have, the more of an outsider you are. And
again, though, is that a function of a culture that was molded by the oppressors to value lighter skin over darker skin, or is that a natural predilection?
The only natural, like, evolutionary side I can speculate on it is the fact that that's also in the selfish gene. Richard Dawkins writes that people are, and I'm going to sound like a raging SJW, people are inherently racist to an extent, in the sense that if someone, it's not just race, it's hair color, eye color, everything. If someone looks like you, they probably have you, the chances are good they have a lot of the same genes as you. And evolutionarily, you want to propagate your own gene. So you are more inclined to work together with people that look like you. Now, in modern times, that's kind of warped because we don't judge each other anymore to that extent as in the past in terms of similarity. Now you want to work together with people that think like you, not look like you. Now you want to help out people that have the same ideology and ideas as you. That's the new modern phenomenon that we're seeing. So yes, I think if you really want to be specific, there is an element of racism within our evolution. It's not just racism. The fact that it's more of a lookism. If someone looks different, then you're less inclined to want to help them. He specifically references a case study where they studied albinos, where people with albinoism actually had a bigger tendency to work together because they looked like each other. It's an unconscious drive where you want to help people that are like you, people that have your genes.
Well, then it makes sense.
Yeah,
if someone looks different,
right?
Something's wrong with them. If everyone in your village is white skinned and then one of you is kind of yellowy or off color, they're ill. And something's wrong.
And that's the thing. It's a very primal idea, and that's why in modern society we need to focus on moving away from that idea, because it doesn't serve a purpose anymore. We basically debunk the idea that, well, not debunk, that's the wrong word. We no longer procreate to just spread our genes. We've transcended that. We've come to the point we actually want to spread our ideas rather than our genes, and that's where we're at the point where we are now, which gives me a little bit of hope, is that more people are focusing more on spreading their ideas rather than spreading their genes, which is a more transcended level and more enlightened level of basically sentience.
Yeah, I like spreading my genes.
He said jeans, not cheeks. Anyway, damn it, that totally threw me off, and I had a really good point. Oh yes, vestigial. Yes, it is our prejudice. Everyone the idea of a innate racism is actually, as you point out, Conscious, it's not really a racism. It's actually just a prejudicial. As Gavin calls it, it's post-judice, whatever. If you're out in a field and you look over and you see a lion charging at you, or a gazelle running by, it is in your best interest to be able to differentiate between the two of them. So we have an innate ability to prejudice things that we see as either positive or negative for us. So if we see an other, and like I said earlier, if someone in your village looks odd, chances are something isn't right with them. So if you see an other, in your mind, you prejudice them instantly because they are different than yourself, therefore not okay. It's as Conscious says, it's primal. We can't help it, but we can overcome it fairly easily by just looking at people as individuals and gauging them on their merits, which we evolve ourselves.
It's actually not even part of the primate brain, because, you know, we're all primates. We're humans. We're primates. And it's not even primate brain, because other primate tribes can do the same thing. They can accept that somebody from another troop might actually be willing to help them. It's lizard brain, so it goes even further back than that. You're not like me, therefore I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, it's an ancient thing where, for example, you have your little tribe, and one day this guy shows up and he's not part of your tribe. That's gonna be an alarm bell. That's gonna be a red flag, because he doesn't look like you. So that means he's from outside. That means he could potentially be a threat. So it's again, like, it's that lizard brain, it's that primal side of us that wants that prejudice that we want to stick. And I think that kind of relates to why we see the grouping of people, for example, in lunch halls where people of certain races sit together, because it's also that primal idea of we need to stick together because we are kind of this tribe and we are together, we share a blood. So
the cool thing about the primate brain versus the lizard brain is that the lizard brain is hardwired to never allow anybody else that doesn't look like you. And primate brain kind of is a little bit more flexible in that you can kind of get over that too if you work at it. And
I was just going to say,
could this person help us? Does this thing actually mean me harm? That's the difference between a primate brain and a lizard brain.
That's the point that we've reached now, and that's the main point of the selfish gene. The main point of the selfish gene is, yes, humans are inherently selfish, and naturally we are not altruistic. But because we are conscious, we can transcend that. We can teach altruism to our children.
Yes.
We can teach our children not to be prejudiced, even though
we have an inner
kind of. Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead, Con.
Oh yeah. So because we have this gift of consciousness and this ability to communicate ideas, we can change society for the better and kind of transcend our primal nature, even though we can't ignore that it is there.
Yep.
Indeed, we have an inner conflict between the ancient brain and the modern, more evolved brain, and unfortunately, it seems to me that we acquiesce to the primitive far too often. Hence, Charlottesville. Hence apartheid.
Hence the modern political climate of Democrats versus Republicans, right versus left, Antifa versus alt-right. We're reverting back to tribalism, but it's because in times of high stress, that's what happens. People revert back to what's safe. Yeah, you kind of regress in terms of civility. Civilization takes a step back.
Like in terms of the United States, there was no reason for the regression.
Yeah,
there
was okay. The mainstream media was spurring it on, and to anecdotally, with Conscious's point, I was in my younger years, I was an amateur MMA fighter. I did a couple of cage fights, and the first time I got hit inside a cage, there was no thought anymore. It was all instinct, all primal. It was pure training. So if you continue to do the same thing over, and soldiers do this, you know, it's muscle memory, it's automatic behaviors. When it comes to dealing with like Antifa versus the alt-right kind of a thing,
based stick man.
Yeah, it's stupid because they're reaffirming time and time again the us versus them narrative versus reaffirming let's meet in the middle where the comp line is, sit on these benches and talk.
And here's the pretty messed up thing. It doesn't really matter who starts it. The more one side turns to tribalism, the more the other side is forced to do the same.
Indeed.
It's a situation where you can't resist it. It's like playing a game where it's a pretty bad analogy, but it's the best I can come up with on the spot. It's like playing a game where one side cheats and you realize, oh fuck, like we're not going to win this unless we play their game as well. And that's what's happening in the political climate at this moment. One side, and I don't really fucking care who started it, one side became violent and more tribal and more divisive, and that caused the other side to do the same to compensate and basically survive and counter this force.
Well,
it was Antifa. It was Antifa.
Well, but either way, is it a fair assessment
really
to say that
that
it really doesn't matter at this point who started it? I think the problem is that the refs didn't throw out the cheaters. I think the big problem is the people we entrusted. So go ahead.
Yeah, the problem isn't who started it. The problem is where we're going, where we're going to end up. That's the thing. That's because we can change that. We can't change who started it. So, fuck, I don't think that's a big priority. The big priority now is that we need to stop it before it escalates to something much uglier, something that you're not going to like.
Well,
But that's just
honest
the thing. It's
question.
already. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Pat.
Okay, go for it.
No, I was about to say, but that's just the thing right there. It's like, you know, when they had a chance to stop it before it even began, they chose not to because, well, most of them just got shamed and got told to stand down. Now that the one side has been so violent that the other side, you know, choose like to react with the same damn way. And I wish they freaking would. And it's like, how do you really stop that now? You know,
That's
the other side
big
basically
conundrum
reacted
that we're
out of
facing.
self-defense.
Well,
exactly.
Yeah, in the beginning, I agree. Is an honest question? Do you guys feel that Charlottesville was the first salvo in the build-up to basically Civil War 2.0? Because let's remember, 15,000 people showed up to counter-protest the 500 free speech rally folks in Boston.
Vernacos was saying he's in Boston. He's like, I can't find the rally. All I see is counter-protesters.
Yeah, and these people are not counter-protesting Nazis. They're counter-protesting a free speech rally.
Right.
That's the scary thing.
This wasn't
So
even
Charlottesville galvanized. And I'm legitimately asking this: Did Charlottesville galvanize this movement to where it is unstoppable until it is forced to stop, i.e., Civil War?
I hope not.
I hope. That's what I'm saying. I hope not.
Okay, let me answer it with a very simple statement. We have, well, basically a metaphor. We basically have a container filled with steam at the moment, and that steam is going to escape one way or another. What manifestation that release takes is up to us at the moment.
I prefer a release valve than like structural failure.
Well, who
course.
would be that? Who would be the release valve? Who has the authority, power, influence? I mean, who can we turn to at this point?
The release valve has always been the middle, but the middle is gone.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're still here.
We're still here. We're just, I'm saying, very small.
We don't have the authority anymore.
Dwindling by the day, yeah?
Yeah.
That's bad news.
Did
That's
you see
very
the
bad
guy?
news.
Did you see the guy that got stabbed just walking out of his freaking car? It's getting really bad.
Yeah, and it's like when they did have the authority, I'm saying, you know, people wouldn't let them use it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I'm scared. I mean, I don't live in America, but I'm worried for America because the 15, Charlottesville pissed me off. It annoyed me, but I was like, okay, this is just typical mainstream media rhetoric or whatever. And then Boston, 500 free speech ralliers, 15,000 anti, and that's because of Charlottesville. That's because some dumb shit proved them right. They've been proved wrong time and time and time and time again. This one fucking event proves them right. Now they're galvanized. They have an army. It's ridiculous. And I don't see an end.
Looking for. I honestly think some of the folks on Antifa were looking for someone to die so they would have a martyr.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the problem. The mainstream media has been painting the freedom of speech folks as the instigators this whole time. And people have been on the fence going, I don't know. I'm looking on YouTube, and it looks like these Antifa jackasses are the violent ones. I don't know. But the news is, CNN is telling me that it's these neo-Nazi free speech guys. I don't know. Charlottesville. Oh, okay. It's the neo-Nazis. It's the media's been right all along. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, I'm afraid that's a big fucking group of people.
Here's the thing. I think my best answer would be a South African saying, which goes, if you look for the devil, you'll find him.
Oh, I was expecting clicks and shit.
No, the actual phrase is, as jy soek vir die duiwel sal jy hom vind. Maar ja, it's if you look for the devil, you'll find him.
Yeah,
so
see, I knew it was going to be something
It's a form
weird.
of confirmation bias.
Yeah, you're completely right. Well, but man, how long have they been looking for the devil? I mean, is this a Donald Trump phenomenon, or is Donald Trump simply the springboard for this movement that's been poisoning? Because I remember the early 90s.
So I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know how familiar you guys
He's not a catalyst. As much as he would love to think he's a catalyst, he's not a catalyst.
Right.
This shit has been a long
Definitely
time
not.
coming.
It has been a long time coming.
8 or 6 years ago.
Mhm.
Here's the thing, and I think Styx Hexenhammer has pointed this out, which I wholeheartedly agree with. I think we're currently smack dab in the middle of a new moral panic, as we had in the 50s, as it reads under the bed. Then in the 80s, we had the satanic panic. And now we're basically there's basically Nazis and Reds and Russian agents in everyone's home. They're among us. They're among you. Your best friend could be a Russian agent. Your best friend could be a Trump voter.
Yeah.
And people are freaking out. People
Yeah.
are scared because of the fear mongering that we have. People are just losing their minds. It's like hysteria.
Yeah.
I don't
And
even
a lot
like
of it-
Trump. I make no bones that I don't like him, and I actually have gotten death threats on Facebook to the point where I had to erase it.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Well, I haven't gotten those yet, but it's like a lot of it is due to the mainstream media and the way they perpetrate all this stuff right here. Like with the whole Antifa thing, when they were assaulting people, when they were hitting them with pepper spray, when they were hitting them with weapons and all that right there, they treated Antifa as den dudes. But the moment something happened to their side, where one saying, well, they got slammed by this one car right here and all that right there, now they switched over like, oh, I'm saying, oh, Antifa are the victims, oh, this person right here, it's the Nazis, it's all this, even though they did all this way before this whole event happened. But when this event on the other side happened, now all of a sudden they want to sit up here and be like, see, Antifa didn't do nothing all this time, even though they did about 4, 5, a dozen attacks and things like that basically thrown up all this whole situation right here until they the other side just did one thing. Now here we are. It's like this all could have been prevented. It all could have been stopped a long time ago if they would just got on Antifa for all the horrible things that they were doing. But they just waited till the other side did something. Now they want to say something.
But like the
Is it
media
too late?
poking shit is not new. This has been happening since like newspapers were the only form of news. It's just poking at, basically poking at things for ratings. They did this during the Great Chicago Fire. They do this every single time. The media has always been poisoned. But it's just more widespread now because of the internet and TV.
Well, Thorne, I have to interject and I have to play devil's advocate because up until 2013, 2014, somewhere during Obama's administration, it had been illegal for not illegal, they would have lost their broadcasting license, to knowingly broadcast false information, i.e. it was illegal for them to propagandize. Obama removed that, or he instructed the FCC to remove that section from the code. So it made it legal for them to knowingly lie on camera. That changed the game. I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you that it was that song "Dirty Laundry" by the I don't remember who it was.
I think we actually agree with each other because I'm just saying it's been getting worse in recent years, both because of that and because of the prevalence of the internet. Radio made it worse than that, and as like the methods of information got faster and faster and faster, the misinformation spreads faster as well.
Yeah, clickbait.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and 140 characters is a curse. 140 characters is
oh my God.
You can't have. And okay, so when I a long time ago when I was thinking about doing a YouTube channel, I'm talking 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I didn't really want to do it because I didn't give a shit about anything back then. But when I was thinking about doing it, I was reading all these guides like how to be a successful YouTuber. Make videos less than like 7 minutes long. It's this pandering to this low attention span theater that is, I think, causing kind of dumbing down dialogue into fuck off Nazis, clap, 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 fuck off Nazis. You know what I mean? Instead
we
of
want dead cops.
Yeah, instead of actual dialogue.
Can I keep my live stream now, YouTube? Sorry.
No, you cannot.
Because apparently that's okay to say.
Oh yeah, no, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Now, Pat, you had said earlier that where you were at in the world, that there's not, in your neck of the woods, there's not a lot of this kind of bullshit, but you've got relatives in areas that there is.
Yeah.
Do you, is it, I don't want to like dox you. In your neck
I'm not worried about that. It's like,
okay.
Everybody know my first name is Patrick, and everybody know I live in Texarkana. Other than that, they don't know.
Oh,
they don't know.
That's what I was going to say is Texas is if you're in Texas, because you think of Texas as kind of the last bastion of redneckery, is the social justice shit bleeding into the day-to-day life?
I say not as much down here as I've noticed. It's little here and there, but it's just basically, like on a day to day, everybody basically gets along. Now, when you go to places like Dallas, oh man, it's got it's just horrible. Like the whole entire, the what do we want dead cops? When do we want them now? That whole thing went on. That whole thing went down right there, and it just gotten crazy and crazy. Well, a lot of the segregation does go, because you got a whole lot of black people down there who basically goes on to this, oppressive narrative that the white man is trying to keep us down and all that right there. And I can't get this, I can't get that, I can't live like this, I can't make no come up is because the white man trying to keep me down. They've hung on to that narrative so bad to that's what it is. That's their excuse. That's their go-to. And what it basically, who's knocking at my door?
It's the man. He's coming to get you.
That's what it is. Like, I have family and I have relatives who are basically, I'm saying, going to that right there. And we've had so many arguments like online and all that right there. And I'm just basically like, say like, that's not true. That's not the situation the majority of the time. Like, yeah, there's racism out there and it's never going to go away. And it's on both sides, both black and white and whatever race and color that you are. It's on both sides. One side is, treating the other a certain way, but it's not the majority of that side that always acts like that. But the ones who sit up there and try to make it like it is, that's the biggest problem right there. Like, you can't fix it by fighting fire with fire. Somebody has to meet up, in the middle and things like that. Everybody needs to talk and see how we can fix these things. But, some people just don't want to do that. They want to just keep, swinging fists and throwing things and blaming everybody else for the other part.
So what was anecdotally, what was your red pill moment? What was your moment that kind of woke you up and escaped the cycle of the white man trying to keep me down kind of bullshit?
Basically, when I got to high school, that's when I like my elementary and all that right there, it was just mostly blacks. Like black kids and all that right there. Then when I moved on to high school and all that right, that's when I got to get into a mixture of a lot of white people, a lot of Indian people, a lot of Hispanic people and all that right there. Got to start knowing, their personalities, their culture and all that right there, and once I got to learning from them, especially, people who basically, are just nice. They got great personalities. They'll listen to you. You get to understand things from their perspective and they get to understand the things from your perspective. And that's how you just went right there. You didn't see race. You didn't start seeing all this right here anymore. So that's where it mostly came for me. Plus, like when I got into the dating process, my first girlfriend was white because, all the black women were taken in my high school. So I had to date outside my race. So that's another thing that really helped me out right there. So ever since then, I just been kind of like, seeing people for their personalities and not for their race or whatever. I know there are some bad people on each side and all that right there, but I tend to dodge those bad people. And if I do encounter them, I know I got the mindset to like not stoop down to their level. Like the white people that want to call me nigger and all this right here, that and everything, I know how to handle them instead of stooping down and like, oh, you call me nigger, smack you in the face and all that right there. You know how to, how to talk, or how to basically like, not to let this stuff just learn how to bounce it off. And I've learned that I'm not taking that.
What you're basically saying is you judge people on the content of their character, you fucking psychopath.
Huh. You racist. When you were dating the white girl, did you get bullshit from people for that?
Yes, I got bullshit from both sides. Black side, why you dating her? You black, she white. And then, and then you got the white people, like basically doing that right there. Oh, stick to your own kind, stick to your own color. There was hate on both sides. But it's like, I learned how to basically, shake all that off. It took me a while because there were some times where I did, give into the hatred and I stooped down to the level of, somebody very dumb. But as time went by and as people kept teaching me along the way, I learned as I went up. So it's like I've been doing it ever since, and I've been teaching my kids. I've been trying to teach people whoever I encounter, whatever these situation right here, by telling my personal experiences, and that's gotten me into a lot of disagreements, of whether online or whether out there and with my family and with my friends and all that right there, especially with this this whole election, all that right there. When they found out I vote Trump, oh goddamn, man, the many people who I done lost as friends, family, and all that right there. Oh, you voted for Trump. Oh, you don't like your race. You don't like all this right here. You have internalized racism and all that, all that jazz. And I said, no, I voted for Trump simply because, honestly, he was the less of the two evils. I really don't like Trump, but it's like, as far as I've seen right now, he's done some good things in my opinion and all that right there. He ain't perfect. No president will ever be, but it's like compared to Hillary Clinton, he's doing a much better job than she would ever.
Yeah, like I said, I think he won in a landslide, not because he was incredible, but because his opponent was so incompetent and basically such a bad candidate.
Yeah.
Mm.
You
Yeah,
can just
no.
the only proof you need is you need to look how many Obama voters did not vote for Clinton. The amount she lost in so many blue states is incredible, and it just shows that
Yeah, I was
she
of
lost
the
some of her own base.
yeah, I was of the stay home variety, and I got blamed. Like, first of all, I live in Chicago. Do you think that really would have made much of a difference? I was of the stay home variety, and folks are just like, oh, why wouldn't you come out for Hillary? Because I don't like Trump and I don't like Hillary, and it's like voting for two turd sandwiches for me. So I'm just gonna stay home. Thank you very much.
For me, it's a point of I judge people on the content of their ideas, not on their race or their gender, or what they have between their legs. And that's why
Yeah.
Hillary lost, because he built her whole campaign on the premise that vote for me because I'm female. She had no
Exactly.
platform.
I'm
She
with
had no platform.
I'm with her.
At least, even though Trump's platform is weak, at least he has the platform. At least he's saying, okay, I'll bring jobs back. I'll do great deals. I'll make America great again. Even that slogan is so much better because it already has a premise. It has a platform. It's a goal. What's the goal of I'm with her? What's the objective? What are you
Vote
going to
for me
achieve?
because vagina.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
my
so
turn.
Because me.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Vote for me, I'm a woman. Vote for me, let's make history. Vote for me, or you're a misogynist.
And then you ask, but what are you going to do? And then she just stands there with like no answer.
Is it safe to say
What are you going to do? Why should I vote?
I have
for
a
you?
new theory? Trump didn't win the election. Hillary lost the election.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's very well put.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, because I know I didn't vote for him. So
Well, it's very frustrating when people call Trump supporters or those of us who voted for Trump racist, because on a personal note, I actually campaigned for Barack Obama in 2008. I went door to door for the guy. Very disappointed, come 2016. But I'm not alone. There was a ton of people who voted for Barack Obama and then voted for Trump. How can you call these people racist because they decided to vote for someone who you think is a racist for some ambiguous oddball way? And furthermore, as all of you have said, it wasn't a matter of voting for Trump because you wanted Trump. It was a matter of voting for Trump because you didn't want Hillary. That was why I voted for Trump. He's a fucking carnival barker. Like, come on. And it pisses me off that was our two choices. Like, really, we have a nation of 350 some odd million people, and the best that we have to offer are these two?
yeah, that's the other problem.
But that's the thing. That's how your
system.
system was constructed. You see, for the last 20 years, basically the powers that be constructed the system that it's very hard to rig a primary election, but it's much easier to rig the party elections at the beginning, where they choose their candidates. So they just make sure that they can rig that both candidates are basically, they're going to debate whether we should raise the taxes by 1% or lower the taxes by 1%. And whoever wins, the big guys don't really care. The people in power, basically, it's a win-win. But then Trump comes along he wasn't the guy that they were banking on. He wasn't the type of person that they were used to in a race. And this fucking just messed with their minds. the fact that now they don't, now they have a race where they need to bank on Hillary Clinton winning to preserve the status quo. Because in the previous years, you had a battle between two people that were basically fighting for the same things, just a little bit different. Like I said, one guy is arguing for lowering the taxes by 1%, the other guy wants to raise taxes by 1%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Also,
Yeah,
Trump
very
is a
interesting.
pitch man, not a carnival barker. He's a really good pitch man and not a whole lot else.
Yeah. What? Oh wait, that's a hype man. Sorry.
Yeah.
I get it confused. But yeah, that's a really good point. That Trump is a pitch man. He's a salesman. And the mainstream media bent over backwards to ensure his placement as the Republican nominee. They really, really were banking on Hillary Clinton. What they were not banking on, stupidly, is that calling everyone who didn't want to go to war with Russia a racist backfired. And there's that little thing called WikiLeaks. That really, I mean, when you run the most
state that he was basically a Pied Piper candidate, where they said we need to promote this guy because he's a moron.
Yes.
And they basically created the monster that destroyed them.
Yeah.
They did.
And what they got to understand is that shaming tactics don't work anymore.
Yeah, that
Right,
was
well,
my response after Brexit. My response was basically
Oh.
calling people bigots and racists and sexist doesn't work anymore. Present some actual arguments, not an argument.
I said, you know what's funny? This terrorism, and I'm not going to derail. There's a point here. I made a tweet the other day saying, ISIS, you have failed. The terrorism happens so often now that it's not even terrifying anymore. It's like, oh well, another day, another explosion.
We're apathetic
you have
now.
failed. We're apathetic. Yes.
We've gone numb.
Yeah, you've failed. Same thing with racism and xenophobia and all the other bullshit they call us. The reason why Charlottesville, it took so long for so many people to go, wow, that was a murderous thing. It took me probably 2 days to finally come to the realization that this was an actual murder and not someone plowing into a crowd of violent attackers trying to escape a free speech rally. No, it was an actual white supremacist actually killing people with his car. But the reason why it took me so long to come to that acceptance was because they are calling everyone a white supremacist and everyone, words are violence somehow. I'm not Muad'Dib. I don't know how words could be violent unless you are in the Dune universe.
I like Dune.
Dude's a great fucking movie, dude.
Oh, hell yeah.
Shit.
But I'm sorry.
I fell asleep halfway through that movie.
Hey.
But anyway, words are power and can cause damage in the Dune universe. We don't live in that universe. So for them to say words are violence, here I'm going to hit you in the head with a stick because you attacked me with words, and then some idiot goes, oh, you're going to hit me with a stick? Here's my Dodge Charger, motherfucker. The next step is guns. That's it. The next step is fucking guns. They're not going to, Antifa's not going to hop in their cars, probably because none of them have cars. They're going to pedal their bikes at you. Anyway, they're going to step up and they're going to do real guns.
They're going to hit you with the lock.
But as I'm saying, but if they ever step to that level right there, and then the other side decide to do the same thing, that's where Antifa's going to realize that, oh shit, this ain't a game no more. Because when stuff gets real, Antifa's going to hide behind whoever else is, they trying to get to have their back.
But here's the problem.
One very big thing that Antifa is not realizing, you're going up against right-wingers, and the only reason none of them have shown up armed yet is because the organizers have been telling them not to.
Yes.
But let's not forget about the third player in this epic chess match, and that would be the government. No, man, if you start getting gun violence between these two groups, it doesn't matter who has the bigger arsenal. The government is going to step in, and we are going to have a totalitarian, authoritarian, military or martial law state.
Yeah, martial law, and that's what we're trying to prevent.
Exactly. It's terrible, and the cops not getting involved from the beginning is a huge red flag to me.
That's like that senator that's called for Trump's assassination a week ago, or like a few days ago, and my rationale was basically that just shows her if she doesn't have to resign over the comment, but at least she has to resign over the showing her incompetence, because she was wishing for a massively destabilizing event that could possibly rip the country apart, and she was supporting it.
Yeah.
People like to joke about this and lightheartedly say, "Oh, I wish I wish X was assassinated or Y was beaten up. I'm like, do you know the repercussions depending on what person that target is? If this is a high-ranking official that gets assassinated, it doesn't matter what side, the country is going to be in chaos.
And
Well, and
also,
even saying that is treasonous. You can get arrested for it.
just on a smaller note, how terrible of a person do you have to be to wish harm and death upon another person just because you disagree with them?
Good point, Thorn.
How
'Cause
horrible
I
are you?
end of the
despise a lot of people. There are a lot of people that
Well-
I find genuinely evil, but if I got the chance, I wouldn't fucking stab them. Like,
No, me either.
No.
it's not the logical conclusion for me. I'd rather beat the shit out of them with logic than with
Yes, I'm saying
real
it's too much.
that.
It's too much fun destroying their, their arguments or their comments or whatever the fuck that they're saying, than punching them in their damn face.
I'm even a person
What
that's
I always
against
tell people, and this basically describes my stance on free speech, is that if someone's wrong, I hand them a microphone because I want other people to hear why they're wrong too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why
P.S.
that's why we don't censor.
Conscious, I tried my best to get Antifa for you. It didn't work.
I'm gonna get an Antifa on one of my streams one day, definitely.
Oh, I would love
I'm working
that.
on that.
Uh-huh.
Oh, dude. I'll promise them, like, I'll get people on the panel that'll treat their ideas with respect. They'll criticize them, but they won't be a dick. Like, I can organize that the people that are going to talk to them are going to be decent people, that are not going to mock them, that are going to be genuinely want to hear what they have to say.
Hey, keep me in mind. I'll be nice. I do have a nice setting.
Me too.
Yeah, I like
Anyway.
to meet. Hey, I'm saying I like to meet somebody who's in those groups right there who can actually see that something is happening on their side, and they're willing to call it out. Like if you give me an Antifa or a BLM or by enemy necessary person who can see, like, okay, I've seen some stuff happen on our side. Even though I support this, I see the crazies on our side, and I'm not afraid to call them out. Those are the people who I'm willing to talk to right there. But the ones who can see that stuff and be like, I ain't see nothing. That's what works my damn nerves.
Smugly puff.
Yeah. They see horrible things happening on their side, but yet they don't call it out.
I think
I'm like, no.
I honestly think
That hurts you.
yeah, if you had to pick a group that would be the most likely to happen in, I think it would be BLM. Because I think a lot of them are like, oh, wait, this is not what I signed up for.
Mm.
I think a couple of them.
BLM was founded on a lie to begin with, wasn't it, Thorn?
Yeah, it was, and I think
yeah.
a couple of them have. A couple of them I saw on Facebook seem to have been waking up to the point of, well, I mean, that's not what we were doing in the beginning, and they seemed really uncomfortable with, like, kind of the violence that was going on. They're just like, no, I just wanted to march. I didn't want this.
Yeah, here's the thing. A lot of these people, no matter what side, I've talked to people, fanatics on both sides. No, not both sides, all sides. And the common connection that they all have is that most of them feel that they're doing the right thing. They don't feel they're doing the wrong thing or they're being evil. For example, an alt-righter or a BLM, the average person in those movements don't wake up the one morning and just decide, how can I be a fucking despicable human being today? They think they're doing what's right. They think they're doing what's needed. So I can understand from that point of view that a lot of them will become disillusioned as the groups become more fringe and more ideologically fanatical. You'll start to lose the reasonable people, and then that's the big danger. Then you're going to be left with the fanatics, and they're not going to be as nice. They're going to play very dirty.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like there are a lot of good people in all these movements right here, but they get overlooked and they get pushed to the back because of the crazy lunatic fringe.
Yeah, it's the empty barrels.
Empty cans make the most noise.
Yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm. And you'll find that too with movements that have been successful. For example, first and a half wave feminism was largely successful. Right to vote,
Occupy Wall Street, case in point.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Once it's successful, the only people left in the movement are the ones who are defined by the movement, and they can't let it go. The other people who are in it for the goal go back to their normal lives.
Yeah, they've built their entire identity behind this movement, and they can't envision themselves doing anything other than protest and basically activism.
Yeah, very true.
And it's
very
like
true.
one
And that's
thing
a scary thing.
I believe that a lot of the suffragettes in like the first wave of I guess you could call them the first wave feminists. I just call them the suffragettes. But they afterwards, they kind of went on like moral crusades afterward. with the after suffrage was achieved, they found other pet projects to do, like prohibition, and they were pretty fucking violent about it too. These were women that carried axes in their skirts so they could fuck people up.
That's actually, I read an interesting article a few days back about that, how the whole suffragette movement was actually based loosely, well, not loosely, but in part also on moralism.
Mm-hmm.
These women didn't want their men coming home drunk every night. They wanted alcohol regulated. They didn't want a drunkard as a husband. And I think that correlates to what we're seeing today as well. So I think we're seeing a strong surge in moralism again. People want to censor and silence and ban certain speech and ban certain activities, and people are guilty by association. If you even just talk to a person with bad opinions, then you're guilty as well. And you get these moral busybodies. And the left of today actually reminds me a lot of the evangelical right of the 80s and 90s. It's almost like a role reversal, where it's no longer video games cause people to be violent. Now it's video games cause people to be sexist. The old blasphemy laws have now been replaced by certain words and certain phrases that you can't say because they're triggering, or that people will find them offensive. And for me, it's a paradigm shift, and we're currently smack dab in the middle. And it's going to be a few years before it's the whole world. It's not just the US. It's all across the planet. We're seeing this happen. It's a political shift in values. For example, in the 60s and 70s, it was the radical Christians that were trying to get musicians censored and concerts canceled because they thought it was immoral. But now in modern society, it's the left that want to shut down speakers, and so it's a shift that's happening. And I think it's going to reach a boiling point, and then things are going to get better. It's always darkest before the dawn.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the corollary between the 1930s and today is that we let women out of the kitchen. Anytime we do that, shit just goes to shit. That's all I have to say. No, I'm kidding, of course.
Do you really want to go on that tangent 2 minutes till the end of the stream?
I do want to throw it off to Pat for final thoughts, and then Conscious, and Thorne and I will wrap up the show. So, Pat, to you, final thoughts. Where can people find you, etc.?
Well, people can find me on mostly, Twitter. I have Minds, and I do YouTube, where, like I said, I just do random videos where I'm talking about whatever comes on my mind, and I do shout outs on the favorite channels that I love. And that's basically right there, Twitter, Minds, mostly on Twitter.
I'm going to shout out this one, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right on. All right, Conscious.
I already have Thorne as a shout out.
Sweet.
I'm also on Minds and Twitter and YouTube. I make small commentary videos, and I'm mostly on Twitter, where I just make little posts and try and give some basic ideas for people to mull over and think about. So come say hi. I'll definitely put a link in the side chat, so you can put it in the description of the stream. But yeah, it's I'm just trying to inform people, because I think a deliberative and an informed populace is what we need now. People need to think. People don't need other people to think for them. That's why the pinned tweet at the top of my profile reads, "The biggest threat to free speech isn't the government silencing us, but the masses of people actively silencing themselves."
Yeah.
We need to work against that. People need to speak out and speak their mind and feel safe doing it. And I think this whole stream can be summed up with the phrase, "Don't confuse being the same with being equal."
Nice. That's fucking brilliant. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For those wondering, a caracal is the cat that his little picture is. Yes, it is an actual animal.
Yes, it is.
I can't be the only one who didn't know that until you enlightened me. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there. All right, Thorne, do your thing.
All right, I'm Thorne, and you're already on my channel, so you can kind of see already what I do. I'm trying a new format with my videos, so please check out Musing on Gravestones, where I cover a little bit of my thoughts on the Confederate monuments and basically human lizard brain and tribalism. I also do this every Sunday, to be determined, and on Thursday nights I do Insomniac Chatter, which is basically whatever subject I feel like talking about on Thursday nights. If you want to be on, DM me. My DMs are opened at Lady of Misrule, that's Lady with an I, of with a 0, on Twitter. I also have a Minds that's definitely not set up, but it will be connected to my YouTube at some point. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and we'll make sure that we get the links. Put your links in the sidebar, guys, and we'll put them in the description after the fact. I'm also going to be copying this video for my channel as well. All right, guys. Next week we don't have anything scheduled yet, no plans yet, so we're going to get together and figure out what the hell we're going to do. Also, we might have our newfangled intro next week with maybe some theme music. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching.
In the work.
And thank you both for coming on to the stream. This was a really good show. I think it went well. I look forward to talking with you guys in future endeavors.
Yes.
Definitely. Cheers.